Hello everybody and welcome to the channel. In today's video we're going to be taking a look at the entire first wave of the newly released Marvel Legends Spider-Man No Way Home. A wave that when it was originally announced I personally was rather on the fence about quite a few of the figures, but actually getting them in hand, overall this is a really strong wave, especially where those MCU and Gamerverse figures are concerned. Now as always, please feel free to let me know down in the comment section below on what you guys think of me actually reviewing Marvel Legends. It's something that I'm hoping to feature more regularly on the channel, so I would love to get some feedback down below, and also be sure to let me know on what you think of these massive reviews instead of splitting them up into individual reviews, of which I definitely can do, but I personally just think to do one big review is better than splitting it across an entire week. Now I don't know about yourselves, but the Spider-Man No Way Home movie is by far the most anticipated movie of this year for me. I just cannot wait to actually see it, and that is mainly down to why this wave has got some rather obscure characters actually packed into it. I do imagine that there's a lot of secrecy actually surrounding some of these characters, to the point where some of the figures in this particular wave don't in fact actually have their official names, such as the black and gold suited Spider-Man, which will no doubt have a much more interesting name once the movie does in fact hit the silver screen. So without further ado, let's kick things off and take a look at the first figure in this wave, which I think is probably the most important one, that being the integrated suit Spidey. So starting off firstly by taking a look here at the integrated suit, this does appear from some of the promo images and some of the other toys that are out there to be the main suit that he shall sport in the movie, and I will be honest and say the figure has actually turned out so much better than I was expecting. To be honest with you, when this was actually announced, I was actually really let down with the wave in general. I thought this was just going to be a mere repaint of maybe the Iron Spider or even the previously released Far From Home version, but nope, it does appear to be a complete brand new sculpt, and you can definitely see that where the pinless joints are concerned. You can see that we do in fact get complete pinless joints there for the elbows as well as for the knees, making this potentially one of the best MCU Spider-Mans that Hasbro have so far put out. And the articulation actually isn't that bad either, definitely not up to standard with what I would expect from a 2021 version of Spidey, but definitely not too bad at all. Now you can see in regards to detail, I absolutely love the texture detail they've managed to apply to the overall suit. You can definitely see this almost fabric effect going on here for the mask, as well as various other aspects of the suit. Now you can see here that the design to the torso is very similar to the Iron Spider. I will actually bring that figure out for a comparison later on, but I can assure you that at least from what I can tell, this is a complete brand new sculpt, and if you are able to actually look through several of these on the shelf, I would definitely recommend watching out for the paint apps. As you can see here, I do sadly have some paint blemishes here to this lower section. I've also got some going on for the shoulders, but here from the back it does appear for the most part to be pretty spot on, which is unfortunate considering that 9 times out of 10 I'm actually going to be displaying this guy from the front. But you can see here for the eyes, I think the paint as well as the sculpt works all turned out really nicely. Once again, a fantastic texture effect going on here for the actual face sculpt. As we turn our attention to the neck, you can see some of that web lining detailing, and here towards the back, once again, a really nice spider logo picked out in gold, and I love how the black does indeed complement this. I really hope that in the movie this is in fact an actual suit instead of CG, as in my opinion some of the newer Spider-Man movies are definitely using way too much CG where the suits are concerned, and it just doesn't look that good. In my opinion, the Maguire suits are by far the best we've seen so far, and that's just one of the many reasons why I'm in fact hoping that Maguire will make an appearance in this movie. But you can see here for the biceps, once again some fantastic suit texture detail. As we spin our attention down to the web shooters, you can see the paint apps are in fact giving you the impression that these are illuminated. Whether or not this is true, I guess we'll just have to wait and see. The figure does come with a pair of interchangeable hands, so we do get a pair of web shooting hands as well as a pair of fisted hands. These are exactly the same for vice versa, so I'll merely just show you them here on this side. You can see the detailing on that looks really nice. And then as we just take a look here at the fisted hands, once again, really nice texture detail. Much like I believe it's the advanced suit that we're getting as an exclusive, it would have been awesome if we could have actually got a web accessory included with this, or maybe an alternate Tom Holland head sculpt. As it stands, we merely do just get an interchangeable pair of hands, which isn't the best in my opinion, especially considering that this guy, from what I can remember, doesn't come with any of the Build-A-Figure pieces. But you can see here for the torso, really nice attention to detail. Once again, definitely watch out for those paint apps, but just spinning our attention down to the thighs, you can see the sculpt work definitely is very impressive. Even turning our attention here to the back, you can see very nice looking sculpt work, and the same can also be applied here for the shins as well as the foot area. Now in regards to articulation, for those of you who own the previous version from Far From Home, you'll know exactly what to expect in regards to articulation, which is a little bit of a letdown considering this is more than likely going to be one of the final Spider-Man movies that we're going to be seeing for a very long time. It would have been awesome if they could have actually finally given us a ball joint here for the diaphragm, or in fact drop down hip joints like we've seen on the most recent Infinity Saga Quicksilver. But nevertheless, the head does in fact have the new style of a double ball peg, so we get a ball peg in the head as well as the neck, allowing this to look up that far, down to that far. It can also tilt side to side to a pretty decent degree, as well as rotate left to right. The butterfly joints are pretty awesome, so these can hinge forwards and backwards. We also do get a hinge joint here at the shoulder, double joints at the elbows. You can once again see that fantastic pinless tech. We do get a rotation here at the bicep, full wrist rotation, as well as a hinge joint forwards and backwards. Just an ab crunch here at the torso, so this can go forwards and backwards. Not back to the best degree in my opinion, but definitely not too bad. We get a full waist rotation. The legs can kick forwards that far. Sadly, they can't really kick back all that much, which is a little bit of a letdown. They can kick out to the sides. Rotation at the thigh, double joints here at the knees, which can definitely bend to a good degree. And finally here for the foot, this can pivot forwards, backwards, as well as of course rock side to side. So in regards to articulation, it's definitely not bad by any stretch of the imagination, but from a 2021 version of Spider-Man, I definitely would expect perhaps slightly better. Now very quickly bringing in the Iron Spider suit, just so you guys can see the differences. Although upon first glance the torso may appear to be the same, I can assure you that they are in fact completely different, and you can definitely see that in regards to the texture. The newer version from No Way Home does in fact have a much smoother design when in comparison to this almost grainy effect that we've got going on here with the Iron Spider. Despite the emblems being incredibly similar, these two also differ. You can see that there with the slight line that we've got going on for the top when in comparison to this, and also the legs are two slightly different. So this is in fact a complete brand new mold, but maybe they could have done something a little more stylistic with this design just in terms of a movie perspective, as I can definitely see this being mistaken for the Iron Spider suit. Next up, taking a look at what is probably my favourite out of the entire wave, here we've got the brand new No Way Home Doctor Strange. Now this figure has actually also turned out so much better than I was expecting. There's really and truly quite a lot of new tooling going on with this guy to make him essentially a brand new sculpt. I do believe the only areas which are a reuse may be the hands, which I'll showcase later on, as well as the lower section of the legs. But other than that, this figure does appear to be brand new, and this was also a character that I actually wasn't expecting to be packaged in this wave at all, especially considering that Doctor Strange 2 is just around the corner, and I can't really imagine them doing something that drastically different in terms of a design in order to just essentially not reuse this guy for that wave. But nevertheless, as we take a look here at the face sculpt, this is in fact a brand new Benedict Cumberbatch head sculpt, and I will be honest and say it looks absolutely fantastic. I've personally always been a huge fan of the 3-pack Infinity War version that we got when that movie was originally released, but I will be honest and say that I think this one has just got the edge. This really does look awesome. You can see here from a front-on perspective, there's no denying who this is supposed to be. I also think the hair sculpt as well as the texture going on for this looks fantastic. You can see the grey strands here for the sides. The beard too has also been replicated really nicely. As we just turn our attention here to the back, one of the major differences with this is that it is now much more matte in terms of finish when in comparison to the almost glossy nature that we got on the previous release, which I'll showcase in just a second. But you can see the sculpt work on this looks really nice, and it also fits the character a lot better in my opinion. You can see here the eye of Agamotto, which I actually think is a slight downgrade when in comparison to the previous version, just as that does have some green paint applied to it. But that's not to take anything away from this. You can see really nice looking sculpt work going on, completely painted there in metallic gold. You can see here for the actual belt section, this too is also a complete brand new sculpt. This looks great. We've got some nice detailing picked out in gold as well as silver here. You can see the arms completely brand new, and you can definitely tell this due to the pinless tech that's been used. And we've got some nice detailing going on here for the actual lower section there of the arms. And I have in fact actually decided to add the spell casting almost magic effects, just as I think these look awesome, and I love that they're not just a complete circle. Of course, if you've seen any movie that Doctor Strange is in, the actual magic effects do have this almost sparky nature to them. So you can see around the edges they're in fact almost shattered and really rough looking, which I think is fantastic, and the detail on these looks really impressive. These are actually molded onto a separate pair of hands, so you will have to remove these in order to get the more generic spell cast hands applied, which I'll showcase in just a second. But even here from the underside, very nice looking detail, and the same can also be said for this side. They are in fact completely different sculpts, so this one is a lot smaller when in comparison to the larger effect, and we don't actually get any time effects for this guy, no green effects, but I don't think that looks too bad at all. You can see the orange definitely looks really cool, and then as we just take a look here towards the torso region, I think this too looks really nice. And then finally here for the lower section, I actually think this cloak piece too has been sculpted and cast very nicely. And then finally the legs are just a reuse of the previous version, and you can see this as they do in fact have the pins applied. But the foot design also looks really impressive, just showcasing how you can still remove the cloak. It is just held in via a very similar peg to what we got on the previous version, and that does reveal some very nice texture detail here on the underside. And the actual back of the figure too has been sculpted really nicely as well, and it just creates for a different look for this guy. And you can also see the eye of Agamotto too is completely removable, which is awesome. Now very quickly going through some of the alternate hands that we get, I would recommend hinging these down when you do actually remove them. You don't want to just pull it front on, as you may in fact actually snap the magic effect from the hand. So just wriggle the wrist out like so, and then we can bring in some alternate casting hands. You can see here that we have a more generic hand. Definitely looks as if though he's about to cast a spell, but we don't actually get the spell effect applied. We do in fact get another one of these to apply to this hand, but I won't showcase that just as I don't want to bore you guys. And we can also swap this out here for what appears to be a grasping hand. Now this looks very similar to the ones that we got with the Infinity War version, where you can in fact actually insert the magic effect that had the handle on. So I'm not entirely sure as to why they've actually included these. Personally, I would have been more than sufficed with just the magic effects and those more neutral grasping hands, but still a pretty nice inclusion. And just to very quickly show you how you can once again reinsert the cape here over the top, you can see that in my opinion fits the figure so much better. Really an awesome release, probably as mentioned beforehand my favorite out of the entire wave. And if I just very quickly bring in the version that we got from the 3-pack, you will begin to see the differences. So the arms are completely retooled, whereas this one actually had the time effects sculpted and molded into the arms. These ones don't, and you can also see that we no longer have the pins. The Eye of Agamotto also appears to be a complete brand new sculpt, so you can see the actual strand appears to be a little thicker on this version when in comparison to this. And actually taking a look at them, the design too is completely different. The magic effects are completely different, seeing as we no longer actually have the handle to hold them. They are cast and molded into the hand, and the actual belt piece too is a complete brand new sculpt, as so is the torso. But the legs do appear for the most part to be exactly the same. Even the boots also appear to be exactly the same, and of course the legs are. But just bringing the head sculpts in here for a closer look, you can definitely see both of them tremendous, but I do just think that the newer version has a slightly more realistic touch when in comparison to this. It may have just been the plastic that they cast this out on. It is definitely a little reflective and a little plasticky in terms of design, whereas I think the flesh tone definitely is a little more realistic. And just flipping our attention here to the back, you can see the cloaks are definitely vastly different, not only in terms of colour and texture, but I also believe the sculpts are too slightly altered. As mentioned beforehand, this fits this guy so much better than on the original version. Now very quickly going over the articulation, the head can look up to that far, down, tilt side to side, as well as rotate left to right. Not the best degree to be completely honest, but here for the arms, these can rotate forwards and backwards, hinge out to the sides. Sadly no butterfly joints, but we do get a rotation here at the bicep, as well as a double joint here at the elbow, full wrist rotation, as well as a hinge joint going forwards and backwards. The actual torso crunch can go forwards that far, not to the best. You can see how it is unfortunately fighting me, but it can rock side to side as well as rotate left to right. The legs can kick forwards that far to a pretty decent degree, considering we have in fact got this skirt piece going on, but I wouldn't recommend pushing too far. As you can see, the plastic has sadly begun to split. We get a rotation at the thigh, double joints there at the knee, rotation at the boot. The foot can pivot forwards that far, back to that far, as well as rock side to side. So overall, definitely a fantastic looking Doctor Strange figure in my opinion. I just really am looking forward to seeing as to what they come up with the Doctor Strange 2 wave, as I really am hoping that they don't just repack this guy. Now, taking a break from some of the live action figures, here we've got, I believe, the only Gamerverse figure in this wave, that being the Miles Morales, based on, of course, the Spider-Man PS4 or PS5 game. And this too is also a really nicely done figure. I do, in fact, actually think that out of all of the Spider-Man figures in this wave, this is by far probably my favourite. This guy is completely brand new from what I could tell. The accessories are killer, and the articulation too is also pretty awesome. And not to mention that I'm actually just a huge fan of the Miles Morales suit in general. I think it has turned out really nicely. It's an awesome design, of course, predominantly black and with the red pinstriping for the actual lining detail, but just such a cool piece. You can see in regards to the face sculpt, that looks really awesome. I think the eyes also look great. You can see the red paint apps have been applied exceptionally well. Quite honestly, there are no real paint bleeds on this. However, sadly, I do in fact get a really nicely ding here in the back, but that's just something to be expected with these figures, I guess. You can see here for the actual lining detail, this has all been picked out incredibly precisely. I absolutely love the spider logo that we've got going on here for the torso. It's so much better than the actual integrated suit that we're seeing from No Way Home. You can see that looks so cool. Really nice red detailings. We do in fact get a slight contrast in regards to paint. I'm not entirely sure whether or not that was intentional, but this does appear to be slightly more matte in comparison to the metallic that we've got going on for the shoulders as well as the butterfly joints, but it is very minor. As we turn our attention here to the back, you can see the paint sadly isn't the best, but really nice metallic red. And then as we turn our attention here to the arms, once again, much like the integrated suit, we've got this really nice fabric texture detail going on, which I think looks awesome. And this too is also a brand new sculpt, so we get the pinless tech going on for the elbows as well as here for the actual knee joints. So you can see that looks great. We get so many interchangeable hands with this guy, but I'll touch base more with that in just a second. Turning our attention here down to the lower section, you can see here once again very nice looking texture detail, and the suit design is just super sleek. Even here towards the back. Now, very quickly going through the articulation, in my opinion, a lot better when in comparison to the MCU versions that we've got going on. So the head, once again, is on a double ball peg. This can look up to a really good degree, even better than the integrated suit. It can also look down, tilt side to side, rotate here all the way around. We do in fact get a hinge joint going on for the shoulder out to the sides, butterfly joints forwards and backwards, supreme double elbow joints. Honestly, these are absolutely fantastic. We also get a rotation here at the bicep, which can rotate the full 360, full wrist rotation. We also get hinge joints here for the web shooting hands, forwards and backwards, ab crunch going forwards that far as well as back to a really nice degree, although from some angles it can make the torso look slightly disproportionate, as if though maybe he's just literally snapped his own back. But you can see how the paint will in fact actually continue all the way up to the top, which I think is a nice touch. The legs here can kick forwards that far as well as back to that far, so once again better than the integrated suit. They can hinge out to the sides, rotation here at the thigh, double jointed knees which can kick himself way up the backside, and sadly for mine I do actually have an issue with this arm where it does have a tendency to pop out of place, so definitely be cautious of these joints in the packaging. And then here finally for the foot, this can go forwards, backwards as well as rock side to side, and you can even see the minute detail of an actual metallic red strip here for the foot, which I just think is super cool. Now getting into accessories, one of the main accessories he comes with is in fact an unmasked Miles Morales head sculpt, so simply just pop that there clean off. We can then bring in this here and snap this here over the top. It does actually take quite a bit of force to jam that in there, but you can see there is the Miles Morales sculpt. Personally, I don't think this looks that realistic to what we actually see on the game. I could in fact be completely mistaken, but I do just think there is something slightly off. But I actually think the paintwork looks really nice, because the face sculpt definitely too is very realistic, and as we actually take a look towards the texture of the hair, this also has turned out really nicely. But we actually get a plethora of different hands, so included are a pair of web shooting hands which are shown here. The detail and the paint on these looks great. Even here from the back you can see very nice looking sculpt work. We also actually get included what I believe are meant to be the wall crawling hands. Now why they couldn't package these in with the MCU figures, honestly I have no idea at all, but the detail on these as well as the actual sculpt work I think is really cool, and they're just super dynamic. They allow you to get Spidey into so many more poses than you could if you just had fisted hands or web shooting hands, so really wish they could implement these on other Spidey figures. But then if we actually remove these, we also do get included a pair of, I believe they're meant to be called Venom biting hands, but to me they're the electricity effects. You can see here that the entire hand is completely cast out of this transparent yellow plastic, and we have in fact got the electricity actually going up the arm, which I think is really cool. Much like the others, we do in fact get a pair of these, so you can see there that looks really awesome. And we also do in fact actually get a pair of fisted hands. So many accessories actually packaged in with this guy. They truly did go all out, and that is probably one of the reasons why this is definitely one of my favorite figures from this entire wave. Next up, we have probably one of the most mysterious figures to come out of this wave so far, that being what they're calling the black and gold Spider-Man suit. Now I personally believe that once the movie comes out, this is going to have a slightly more technical name, just due to the nature of the almost cybernetic components that are in fact actually scattered on this guy. And this is also a figure which I believe has turned out really nicely. Now this, unlike some of the others, is in fact just a direct carryover from the one that we got from Far From Home, albeit this time just completely painted differently. Although I will say that the new paint apps definitely do look fantastic and are slightly more than meets the eyes. Initially you would just think this to be a black and gold spider suit, but I can assure you that there are some really nice imprinted details pretty much scattered throughout the figure, which you probably wouldn't notice upon first glance. They really have done something pretty special with this guy, and I definitely do think that this suit is going to play a major role in the movie. I'm not entirely sure as to what its role could potentially be. Maybe it's an almost variant protector suit to actually stop this version of Spider-Man being transported into various different parts of the multiverse. I guess we'll really just have to wait and see, but you can see that in regards to detail, the golden paint apps look absolutely fantastic. You can see these are completely highlighting all of these individual web lines that we've got scattered throughout the suit, which I think looks incredible. Even as we turn our attention here to the back, you can see the neck piece. All of these have turned out super nicely. The spider insignia too has also got that golden highlighting effect going on for it. You can see for the shoulders, this looks excellent. Turning our attention to the torso region, this is by far my favourite part of the figure, and you can also see here once again some of that cybernetic imprinting that we've got going on here for the torso, actually down here to the lower section, and you can also see it here on the thighs, and there's also some actually scattered here for the biceps, and I believe also some here on the actual top of the head. So this definitely is an actual cybernetic suit, and I'm really excited to see as to what type of role this plays in the movie. But you can see here for the arms, I think these have turned out really nicely. Sadly, as this is an older body type, we do actually get the pins here for the elbows and for the actual knees. It's not too detracting, but I do slightly wish they maybe could have given us a better mold, especially considering that I at least believe this suit is going to have a major role to play in the movie. You can see here for the forearms, we've got this really nice metallic red just to break up from the black and gold contrast, And once again, we've got the web shooting hands there. This guy does also, in fact, actually include a pair of slightly open grasp hands, very similar to the previous version. I believe these are just a direct carryover. Personally, I've always found these to be slightly pointless, as you really can't utilize them for anything. So once again, why this guy doesn't come with any wall crawling hands is beyond me, but nevertheless, I guess these are a nice inclusion for those of you who want to utilize that web accessory from the upcoming advanced suit. But you can see here, down to the lower section, really nice attention to detail, especially where those glyphs are concerned. Just spinning our attention here to the back, it's pretty much a bland and basic black design, but taking a look down to the lower section, once again, you've got that gold almost pinstriping with some of those cybernetic details present. And then just taking a look there at the foot, also very, very nice attention to detail. Now, the articulation is basically the same as the integrated version as well as the advanced suit. So here for the head, it can look up and down. It's an old style, so we don't get the double ball peg. We merely get the hinge joint as well as the single ball peg. But it still allows for a pretty decent range of motion looking up and down. Of course, it can rotate left to right, but sadly can't really tilt left to right all that much. We do get a full rotation here at the shoulder. The shoulders can hinge out to the sides. Fantastic butterfly joints. Probably the best butterfly joints that I've taken a look at so far throughout this entire review. We do get a full rotation here at the bicep as well as a double joint there at the elbow. Sadly can't bend as well as some of the previous Spideys that we've taken a look at, but nevertheless we do get a full rotation here at the wrist, a hinge joint going forwards and backwards, a pretty decent ab crunch ratcheting forwards as well as back, and much like some of the previous figures, you can see how not only does the gold detailing actually continue, but you can also see more of that almost cybernetic tech detail, which I think looks awesome. We also do get a waist rotation, rotating the full 360. The legs can kick forwards that far, back to I would say about that far, hinge out to the sides, rotation at the thigh as well as a double joint here at the knee, bending to a very good degree. And finally for the foot, this can pivot forwards, backwards, as well as rock side to side. So overall, in regards to molds, it is just essentially a repaint, but I will be honest and say probably a really, really awesome repaint. And I do actually think this is going to be a figure that many collectors actually sleep upon. And then after the movie, I actually think he's going to be sweeping off shelves. So I at least believe this is going to be a really, really cool suit. At least I hope so. And just for a very quick comparison, here we've got the black and gold suit compared next to the integrated suit. So you can see there the similarities and differences. Very, very similar in terms of design, of course. The only major design element which changes is the actual design there of the spider insignia in the torso, and of course the web shooters. But other than that, very, very cool figures, and I just cannot wait to actually see how these suits play on screen. Wrapping up the MCU portion of the video, here we've got J. Jonah Jameson, and to be completely honest with you guys, I'm just so stoked to actually get this guy back on screen. I absolutely loved him as a kid in some of those Sam Raimi movies, and I'm so glad that it appears as if though he's going to be making a major comeback in the upcoming No Way Home movie. He was great in that very brief cameo that he had in Far From Home, and he definitely hasn't lost his touch at all. Now, the figure essentially is just more or less what we've seen before, especially where the body type is concerned. The only new areas, I believe, are in fact the shirt piece, the head, as well as the hands. I personally am not really a huge fan of this particular body type. It's one that we've seen many times before. It's not the best, but I guess for J. Jonah Jameson, they didn't really think it was worth it to completely retool the body, and I can kind of understand as to why, as no doubt this guy will probably just more or less appear behind a TV screen. But nevertheless, you can see here I have opted to go with a slightly more angry expression, as if though he's damning Spider-Man for mere existing, but you can see the actual attention to detail as well as the likeness I think is spot on. They've done an absolute fantastic job. You can see there the moustache, which is still as apparent as ever. I think that looks really nice. The attention to detail to the eyes and the eyebrows also looks awesome, and the actual facial expression as well doesn't look too bad. Sadly for mine, you can see how the teeth do appear to be slightly misprinted. It appears as if though he's got two sets of upper teeth, which looks slightly unusual. From a further away perspective, it doesn't look as bad, but when you really do get that up close and personal, you can kind of see as to what I'm talking about. But here for the head design, you can see we've got the hair going around the back as well as the grey pieces, and the suit, as mentioned beforehand, is more or less exactly what we've seen before, besides this piece, which I do believe is brand new. You can see that's been cast out of a very light shade of blue, and the actual gestures for the hands too are brand new. So we get a pointing expression, which looks really awesome, as well as an upraised fisted hand, which also looks cool, and you can see a nice golden ring actually sculpted and painted on there. And we also do get a pair of interchangeable hands. These are open palmed, so maybe if he wants to slap one of his secretaries or a photographer for missing a shot of Spidey. But you can see there really nice attention to detail, as well as once again that golden ring. And we also do get included a more neutral expression for J. Jonah Jameson. So you can see there, that looks really awesome. I'd say that out of the two, perhaps the shouting expression is a little more faithful to the actual actor's appearance in the movie. I think there's just something slightly off by this one. It's definitely not bad by any stretch of the imagination, but I don't think it's as close as we've got with this one. And just to very quickly show you, it actually implemented onto the figure. Considering it's an older body type, we merely get the hinge and ball peg instead of the double ball peg, but I definitely don't think it's too bad for this type of character. So once again, you can see there, really nice likeness, but there's just something about that yelling sculpt that I think is a little better. I shan't go over the articulation. As mentioned beforehand, you guys probably know exactly what to expect in regards to this figure, but I at least think it's a nice inclusion, and considering I'm a huge fan of the Raimi movies, I'm super glad to finally actually have an action figure of this guy, and I'm just super stoked that we could actually potentially be seeing an MCU version of Doc Ock in the near future. I just cannot wait to actually see as to what Hasbro do with that character, but this is definitely a really cool release. So moving on to the final two figures that we've got for the wave until we actually take a look at the Build-A-Figure, we've got a more obscure character, at least in my opinion, this time in the form of Shriek. Now, I personally actually don't know anything about this character at all, other than the fact that she's going to be making her live-action debut in the upcoming Venom 2 movie, but the actual figure itself is fairly nice looking. Now, of course, the major attraction to this release is that this is in fact now the standard female body type going forwards, as this has not only pinless tech, but at long last, double-jointed elbows on a female figure, and I think this is really awesome. It's a great step forward for the Marvel team, and I really cannot wait to see as to what other figures we get in the upcoming future that actually utilizes this body basis. But in regards to Shriek's head sculpt, I think the hair design is absolutely fantastic. The sculpt work really does look great. You can see all of the strands of hair sticking out towards the back as well as the front. The fringe looks awesome. We've got there one eye which looks as if though it's blind. Once again, I don't know anything about this character, I do apologize, but we've got another one there which has been painted really nicely, and the actual paint and sculpt work for the face as a whole has turned out really well. You can see there we've got some earrings. As we turn our attention down to the lower section, a very sleek body type. Of course, we've got some nice white detailing here for the torso, as well as this belt section, and she's also got a bracelet which is a separate sculpt here, which you will have to be cautious of when actually swapping out some of the hands, as you definitely don't want to lose this. But you can see there, very elegant and sleek design going on there for the elbows. Spinning our attention down to the lower section is exactly what you would expect from a basic female body type, so we've got very streamlined design going on for the legs, as well as once again that pinless tech and the foot. Now, in regards to accessories, she comes with a plethora of different hands. I shan't actually swap them out just as I really like these open gestures, but she gets a pair of open gestures, she gets a pair of grasping hands, as well as a pair of fisted hands. And very briefly going over the articulation, due to the hair sculpt, the head is slightly restricted, so it can look left to right as well as up and down very slightly. We do in fact get a rotation here at the shoulder, which can hinge out to the sides to a pretty decent degree. Full rotation there at the bicep, as well as a fantastic double joint here at the elbow. You can see at long last, that is just so cool to finally see. We do in fact get a full rotation here at the wrist, a hinge joint at the wrist, a pretty decent ball joint going on for the torso. It can't really crunch forwards that far, which is unfortunate, but it can crunch back to a pretty decent degree. Rock side to side as well as rotate left to right. The legs can kick forwards that far, back to that far, out to the sides, rotation at the thigh, double joints here at the knee, which can bend also to a pretty decent degree. Not as far as some of the Spider-Mans, which is unfortunate, but nevertheless, we do in fact also finally get a hinge joint here at the foot, going forwards and backwards, as well as, of course, that awesome ankle rocker pivot. So, whilst not my favourite figure out of the wave, and to be honest, if I wasn't building the BAF, I probably would have given this an easy miss, but I can definitely see this being exciting for those of you who have wanted an actual double-jointed, updated female body type for many years, as I do believe this is the standard now going forwards. And wrapping up with these single-carded figures before we take a look at the Armadillo Build-A-Figure himself, here we've got Morlun. Now, this, much like Shriek, is a character which I actually don't know anything about, but unlike Shriek, I actually really like the way this figure's turned out. Now, initially, when this guy was sort of teased, I believe in a Marvel stream, I actually believed this to be an upcoming Morbius, but nope, it is Morlun, and I will be honest and say that I actually think he's a really cool figure. Now, in regards to the head sculpt, you can see we do in fact actually get two, so this one's got a slightly more grinning expression when in comparison to this very angry expression that we get. You can see very cool looking sculpts, and the paint for both of them looks fantastic. We turn our attention here to the back, you can see the hair sculpt too also looks really impressive. I think the paint apps for the face too look awesome, especially where those black pupils are concerned. And then as we just take a look here towards the torso, I am sure that this has been used in the past. I actually don't own a figure which has used this body type before, so to me this is brand new, so please do excuse me for my ignorance, but I am pretty certain this is an old body type, as it does in fact have the pins. You can see we've got some really nice cuff detailing as well as some silver details there, and the actual hands look awesome. Now, I do believe these to be almost some sort of suckers. That's definitely the impression I'm getting from this figure, but they've been painted in red. You can see the claws there looking incredibly menacing and intimidating, and the same can also be said here for this side. Really nice metallic silver going on for this torso piece. You can see the actual cravat there has got a nice red detailing, and then just spinning our attention down to the lower section, you can see a nice silver buckle as well as some pretty nice creased and wrinkled effect going on for the legs. I shan't bore you with the articulation, as I'm pretty sure you guys have probably seen this mold before, but in my opinion, I definitely think this is a pretty cool figure, and out of both Shriek as well as Morlun, I would definitely pick Morlun night and day, as I think he looks really, really cool. So finally, wrapping up this review by taking a look at the Build-A-Figure himself. Here we've got Armadillo, and this is truly worthy of being the BAF. This guy is massive, honestly, a truly chunky piece of plastic, and the attention to detail also is really, really impressive. Now, as we take a closer look here at the face sculpt, you can see the actual expression that Hasbro have given this guy looks extraordinary, and not to mention that the sculpt work is truly awesome, especially where that nose as well as the teeth are concerned. I think that looks super cool, and the paint apps, surprisingly, have actually turned out really nice, especially for the teeth as well as the gums. Now, as we spin our attention here to the back, where the actual shell of Armadillo is, you can see the sculpt work on this looks really impressive. I'm actually a huge fan of the colour that they've actually painted this. Now, initially, I just imagined this to be cast plastic, but you can actually see where some of the paint has sadly worn off. So this entire piece is, in fact, completely painted, and you can see the shell detailing just looks fantastic all the way throughout the body. I guess you can call this almost the armour of Armadillo, but you can see here as we turn our attention to the shoulder pieces, these two are incredibly big and bulky. Luckily, they're not attached to the shoulders, so don't really restrict articulation all that much. And as we take a look here towards the bicep, you can once again see more of that shell detailing. We've got some nice vein details going on here for the actual shoulders themselves, and the actual gauntlet pieces too look really, really cool, and those claws are just incredibly vicious, sharp, and really do look as if though they could pierce anyone who they slash. As we take a look here towards the torso region, this has been painted out of a slightly more creamish type of paint when in comparison to the rest of the body, but you can see the sculpt work there looks really, really awesome. And then as we just finally turn our attention down to the legs, you can once again see that really nice detailing all the way throughout the figure, as well as once again that really awesome shell going on for the thighs, the shins, as well as the actual kneecaps. And then spinning our attention to the foot itself, much like the claws, you can see the paintwork here for the toenails looks really, really cool, and the actual attention to detail as well as the sculpt work also I think is really, really awesome. Just spinning our attention once more to the back, you can see more of that shell detailing. And then finally, as we just very quickly go through the articulation, the head is in fact on a double ball peg. Sadly, he can't really look up all that far, which is a little unfortunate, but he can look down. He can of course rotate left to right and tilt very slightly side to side. We do get rotations here at the shoulders, which could probably rotate the full 360. However, the further you begin to push them, you can see that this upper piece will in fact become slightly distorted and doesn't look the best. We do in fact get a hinge joint out to the side, full rotation there at the bicep, single jointed elbows due to the nature of the design and just how big and bulky this guy is, full rotation at the wrist as well as a hinge joint forwards and backwards. We do in fact actually get an upper diaphragm cut, so this allows the figure to crunch forwards that far, back to that far, as well as rock side to side and also tilt side to side as well. So that's a pretty decent range of motion. Sadly, he can't in fact actually curl up into a ball, but I'm pretty certain that that will be something we'll see in the future. The legs can kick forwards that far and are not restricted, despite having some pretty thick pieces of armor here for the thighs. They can also kick back that far, hinge out to the sides, rotation there at the thigh, as well as a single joint here at the knee, much like the actual elbow. And then finally for the foot, this can pivot forwards, backwards, as well as of course rock side to side. So overall, in regards to articulation for such a big and bulky character, I actually think the Armadillo has turned out really nicely, but at least in my opinion, it's all about that shelf presence as well as the attention to detail that Hasbro have been able to pack into him. I really, really do think he looks fantastic. Now, very quickly, comparing him to some of the other figures that we've got in the wave, here we've got him compared next to the integrated suit Spidey, so you can see him next to a regular 6-inch scale figure. Definitely an enormous piece, I'd say roughly 8 or maybe 8.5 inches in terms of scale, but overall a super, super awesome looking figure. And so, some final thoughts for this Spider-Man No Way Home Marvel Legends Armadillo Build-A-Figure wave. Overall, I think that is pretty awesome. There are definitely some highlights out of the wave, such as the integrated suit Spidey, the Miles Morales Spidey, as well as the Doctor Strange. I think that the remaining 4 figures are rather hit and miss. I do really love what they've done with the black and gold suit, and like I said beforehand, I think many more collectors will be after it once the movie does in fact hit the silver screen and we actually begin to understand as to what that suit's all about. But for the most part, it is effectively just a repaint, which is why I think that it is slightly lower ranked when in comparison to some of the new molds that we've got, such as the Miles Spidey as well as the integrated suit. The Shriek as well as Morlun figures, I personally am not that familiar with them, so I don't really have that much of an emotional connection with the characters. But with that being said, I can't take anything away from the detail. I think both of them are very nicely detailed, and in the actual case of Shriek, I think she's going to be a major game changer going forwards, as of course she's one of the first female figures to actually utilize this new body type, and I definitely think that it's a major improvement and step in the right direction when in comparison to some of the previous female body types that we were getting in the past. The J. Jonah Jameson figure, personally, once again, I do believe believe this is going to be another shelf warmer, but I actually really like the character, so I'm super glad to actually get an MCU representation of this guy into the collection. And then as we turn our attention to the Armadillo Build-A-Figure, of course, this guy is absolutely awesome. Not, in my opinion, as good as some of the other MCU figures that we've got in the wave, but that's just merely down to personal preference, as I really do love the MCU live-action figures. But the Armadillo figure is a massive piece, really nice detailed, and despite being a very bulky character, I actually think the articulation too is pretty decent. Now, of course, I would have loved to have gotten some more characters actually based on the upcoming Spider-Man No Way Home movie, but due to the secrecy that's surrounding that film, I can completely understand as to why we've mainly just got variations in suits as well as Doctor Strange, as that really is the only thing that we've seen from the trailers so far besides Doc Ock. And I think that if they were to have made a Doc Ock figure, it no doubt would have leaked before the trailer came out, so I can completely understand as to why they may in fact actually be holding that until after the movie has indeed come and gone. I would love to know down in the comment section below on what you guys think of this particular wave. Are there any figures here that are must-haves for you? Are there any that are easy misses? Or is this in fact a solid case where you're going to be picking up every single one? I would love to know down in the comments on what you thought of both the figures as well as the review, and until my next review, I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.